Veteran and his dog saved a diner at midnight, but God had a bigger plan for them. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a cold night in the small town of Ashford, where the wind howled through the empty streets like a warning that no one was listening to. The clock struck midnight, and the town seemed to hold its breath. In the distance, the only light that could be seen came from the old diner at the corner of Main Street. The diner, once a thriving place where locals gathered for their late-night coffee, had seen better days. Its neon sign flickered weakly, as if it, too, had lost the fight against time. But tonight, the diner would become the center of something far greater than anyone could have imagined. Tom, a battle-worn veteran who had returned from overseas service, was driving through the town with his loyal dog, Max, by his side. Max, a 6-year-old German shepherd, had been with Tom through thick and thin, a constant companion since his time in the army. Tom wasn't looking for anything that night. He was just passing through, trying to find some peace after years of chaos. He never expected to find it here, in the small diner on a stormy night that Tom's truck rumbled down the dark road, its headlights cutting through the fog. The storm had come out of nowhere, and the cold rain beat relentlessly against the windshield. Max sat quietly beside him, his ears twitching as if he sensed something in the air. As they approached the diner, Tom noticed the light in the window. It wasn't much, but it was enough to catch his attention. Without thinking, he turned the wheel, driving toward the diner. When Tom pulled up to the diner, he saw that the door was slightly ajar, and smoke was rising from somewhere inside. His instincts kicked in. He grabbed his coat and jumped out of the truck, Max following closely behind him. The air smelled of burnt wood, and the faint sound of crackling fire reached his ears. Tom rushed inside, his heart pounding, not knowing what he would find. Inside, the scene was chaotic. The diner was engulfed in smoke, and the small kitchen in the back was on fire. Behind the counter stood Betty, the diner's elderly owner, frantically trying to put out the flames with a small fire extinguisher that seemed to do little more than sputter and fizzle. She was alone, her frail body struggling against the fire. "Help!" Betty cried, her voice weak and desperate. Without hesitation, Tom ran forward, pushing past the thick smoke. "Stay down," he shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Max barked, his alert eyes scanning the room, sensing the danger before Tom did. Tom grabbed Betty, pulling her away from the fire and out the back door into the cool night air. Max followed, barking furiously, keeping close to Tom's side. They made it outside, and Tom gently set Betty down on the cold pavement. She coughed and gasped for breath, her face streaked with soot. "You're safe now," Tom said, his voice calm as he checked her for injuries. Betty nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she whispered. But even though the immediate danger was over, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. There was something more to this night, something that went beyond just saving the diner. Little did Tom know, this act of kindness was about to lead him to a life-changing revelation. The small diner, once forgotten by time, would become the gateway to a miracle he never saw coming. The rain had stopped, but the night still felt heavy with the weight of the storm. Tom stood outside the diner, his breath visible in the cool air as he looked over at Betty, who was sitting on the curb, her hands trembling from the shock. The fire had been put out, but the damage was done. The small kitchen was charred, the counters ruined, and the smell of burnt wood lingered in the air like an unwelcome memory. Betty wiped her face, trying to regain her composure. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." Tom nodded, unsure of what to say. He wasn't looking for thanks. He had just done what felt right. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." Max, ever faithful, sat by Tom's side, his amber eyes scanning the streets, alert as always. Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in him that night. It wasn't just about saving the diner. Something deeper was at play. As Betty slowly got to her feet, Tom stepped back, his hand resting on the truck door. "I'll help you clean up, get things back in order," he said, his voice steady but gentle. Betty looked up, a faint smile on her face despite the circumstances. I appreciate that, but I don't know if it's worth it. This diner's been in my family for generations, but it's been hard to keep it running. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Tom knew that struggle all too well. He had lost so much during his time away, his family, his friends, his sense of purpose. But somehow, the diner felt different to him. There was something about this place, something that seemed to call out to him. The next morning, after a restless night of sleep, Tom woke early. The diner was still quiet, the streets still empty, and the storm had left behind a thick layer of dampness in the air. He rubbed his eyes and sat up in the old armchair Betty had offered him for the night. Max lay at his feet, his body curled up like a protector. Tom felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. It wasn't just the diner. It was everything. The feeling that this was where he was supposed to be, the idea that something larger than him was guiding him. Tom stepped outside and walked toward the diner, where Betty was already inside, cleaning up the debris. The place looked worse than he remembered, counters scorched, tables overturned, but there was something about it that still felt alive. Betty was wiping down the counters, but her movements were slow and tired. Tom approached her cautiously. Betty, what if we made a go of this? We can fix the place up, get it back to what it was. She paused and looked up at him, her blue eyes filled with both skepticism and hope. And what happens when the money runs out again? What happens when I can't pay the bills? This place was built by my father, but it's falling apart. Now, it's like the world has forgotten about it. Tom took a deep breath. He knew what it felt like to be forgotten, to be left behind. But there was something about Betty's diner that made him feel like he was at the edge of a new chapter. I don't think this place is finished. I think it's just waiting for the right moment. Betty looked at him, the faintest spark of hope flickering in her eyes. You really think so? Tom smiled. I know so. Over the next few weeks, Tom and Betty worked together to clean up the diner. They replaced broken furniture, scrubbed the floors, and repainted the walls. Slowly but surely, the diner began to take shape again. Tom spent his days fixing things around town, using his skills as a former combat engineer, while Betty worked tirelessly in the kitchen, preparing meals for anyone who walked through the door. The more they worked, the more Tom felt that this place was where he was meant to be. It wasn't just about fixing a diner. It was about fixing something inside himself, something that had been broken for a long time. As the diner started to feel like home again, Tom realized that his act of kindness that night had set something in motion. The world was giving him a second chance, just like Betty was getting one too. And maybe, just maybe, this diner was the miracle they both needed. But what Tom didn't know was that there was more to the diner than he realized. The deeper he dug into its past, the more he uncovered hidden treasures, long-forgotten stories, and a secret legacy that had been buried for decades. And soon, he would discover that the diner held a power far greater than he ever imagined, one that would change not only his life but the lives of everyone around him. As the days passed, the diner slowly but surely began to feel alive again. The sound of clinking dishes and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as Tom and Betty worked side by side to breathe new life into the old building. Tom was beginning to feel something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. Each task, whether it was fixing a broken chair or mopping the floor, felt like a step toward healing, not just for the diner, but for himself. Max, his ever-loyal German shepherd, was always by his side, his watchful eyes constantly scanning the room. It was as though Max understood that their journey together wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something more. Betty, too, seemed to come alive in a way that Tom hadn't seen before. The fire from the night before, the one that had almost consumed everything she had left, had sparked something deep inside her. There were moments, especially late in the evenings when the diner was quiet, when she would sit at the counter, staring out the window, lost in thought. Tom noticed these moments, and he could tell that Betty was struggling with more than just the physical damage to the diner. She was wrestling with the idea of losing it all. But despite her doubts, she never gave up. One afternoon, while Tom was in the back fixing a broken door frame, Betty walked over to him, her face more serious than usual. She held something in her hands, a small, weathered envelope. I found this, she said quietly, handing it to him. The envelope was old, its edges frayed and yellowed with age. Tom carefully opened it, revealing a letter inside. It was written in elegant handwriting, and as he began to read, he realized that it was a letter from Betty's late husband, Jack, who had passed away many years ago. The letter was addressed to Betty, and it contained a heartfelt message about the diner, about the importance of keeping it alive for future generations. Jack spoke of how the diner had been a place for the community to gather, a place of warmth and kindness in a world that often felt cold. But what caught Tom's eye was the final paragraph. Betty, if you ever feel that the diner is too much for you to handle, remember that the diner is not just a business. It's a legacy. And sometimes, when we feel that everything is falling apart, it's a sign that something greater is about to happen. Keep the faith, and trust that the diner will guide you when the time is right. Tom's heart skipped a beat as he finished reading. The words seemed to echo in the quiet diner. Something greater is about to happen. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear those words until now. He handed the letter back to Betty, who had been silently watching him. Jack knew, didn't he? Tom said, his voice filled with awe. He knew this place was more than just a business. Betty nodded slowly, her eyes misting over. He did, and I think he was right. I've been holding on to this place out of fear, but maybe I'm supposed to let go. Maybe I'm supposed to trust that the diner has its own plan. Tom looked out the window, his mind racing with possibilities. Maybe the diner wasn't just a place of refuge for Betty. It was a place of refuge for him too. He had been wandering, lost for so long. But now, with Betty, with Max, and with the diner, he felt like he was finally finding his way. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. The diner was a part of his journey now, a part of something larger than he could understand. That night, after they had closed the diner, Tom and Betty sat outside on the porch, watching the stars above. The cool air was soothing, and for the first time in a long while, Tom felt at peace. He turned to Betty and smiled. You know, Jack's letter, it really does make me believe that there's something bigger at play here. Betty smiled back, a sense of calm settling over her. I think you're right. This diner, this town, it's all part of a story we're just beginning to understand. And just like that, Tom knew that they were no longer just rebuilding a diner. They were rebuilding hope for themselves and for the people who would walk through those doors in the days to come. The diner wasn't just a business. It was a beacon, a light in the darkness, guiding them towards something neither of them could have imagined. And as Tom looked up at the sky, he realized that the diner had given him something even greater than a place to stay. It had given him a second chance. As the days continued to pass, the diner became more than just a place for Betty to run. It became a symbol of rebirth, a quiet beacon of hope for both her and Tom. Every morning, they opened the doors to the soft smell of fresh coffee brewing and the sizzle of bacon in the kitchen. The place felt different now, more alive, more full of possibility. People began to trickle back, locals who had once lost faith. In the old diner, now returning, drawn by the warmth that seemed to emanate from it. Even the storm that had once threatened to destroy it now seemed like a distant memory, a part of the past that had led to something greater. Tom, who had been so lost just months ago, felt the changes in himself as much as he saw them in the diner. He had started to believe in something again, not just in the diner, but in his own future. There was a sense of peace that had settled inside him, a peace he hadn't felt in years. Max, his ever-present companion, seemed to sense it too. The dog was calmer now, as if he knew that this was where they were meant to be. One morning, as Tom was preparing for his usual tasks, fixing the roof, painting the walls, mopping the floor, he noticed a figure standing outside the diner. It was an older man, his face weathered with age and experience, his clothes worn from years of hard work. He was staring at the diner with a look of quiet contemplation, almost as if he was waiting for something. Tom stepped outside, wiping his hands on his jeans, and approached the man. "Can I help you?" Tom asked, his voice friendly but cautious. The man turned to him, his blue eyes sharp and clear. "I was just admiring your place," he said, his voice gravelly, but not unfriendly. "Used to be a regular here, back in the day. Haven't seen this place alive like this in years." Tom smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him at the compliment. "Yeah, it's been a lot of work, but we're getting there." The old man nodded, his gaze lingering on the diner for a moment before he spoke again. "I knew Jack, the man who built this place. He was a good friend of mine. We used to work together back in the day, before he passed." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He had heard Betty mention Jack a few times, but had never met anyone who had known him. Jack was your friend? Yeah, the man said with a nod. We worked side by side for years. This place meant a lot to him, and I can tell it means a lot to you too. Tom glanced over at Betty, who was inside, preparing the first batch of pastries for the day. She was focused, but there was a lightness in her step that hadn't been there before. He turned back to the old man. I don't know if I can ever live up to what Jack did for this place, Tom admitted. The man gave a knowing smile. You don't have to. Jack knew what this place needed, and he knew that sometimes things have to break before they can be rebuilt. You're doing just fine. Tom felt a weight lift from his chest at the old man's words. Thank you, he said quietly. As the old man walked away, Tom stood there for a moment, reflecting on what he had said. There was truth in those words, a deep truth. This diner, this small corner of the world, was more than just a business. It was a piece of history, a place that had seen love, loss, and now, a new beginning. Tom realized that he wasn't alone in this journey. The diner had a history that stretched back decades, and now, it was becoming a part of his own story. Later that day, as the sun began to set and the last customers finished their meals, Betty sat down at the counter, her face thoughtful. Tom joined her, wiping his hands on his apron. You know, he said, looking out the window, I think we've done more than just fix this place. I think we've started something new. Betty smiled, her eyes bright. I think you're right. For the first time in a long time, I feel like we're on the right path. And it's not just about the diner. It's about everything. Tom nodded, feeling the same way. Yeah, I think this is where we're supposed to be. As the night wore on, and the last of the dishes were washed and the chairs were stacked on the tables, Tom looked around the diner one last time. It wasn't just a building, it was a promise. A promise of second chances, of new beginnings, and of the miracles that could happen when people had faith, when they believed in something greater than themselves. And for the first time in a long time, Tom believed in that promise too. This diner, this place that had once been on the brink of closing, had now become the center of something bigger, a symbol of resilience, hope, and the belief that sometimes, when we think everything is lost, the best is yet to come. As the weeks turned into months, the diner became more than just a business to Tom and Betty. It became a home, a sanctuary for both of them, where the past met the present, and where hope was built from the ground up. People from all over Ashford and beyond began to hear about the diner's revival, and soon the small town's once-forgotten gem was a bustling hub of activity again. There was something special about the place now, a quiet energy that seemed to draw people in. It wasn't just the food or the friendly faces. It was the spirit of the diner, the sense that it had been brought back to life for a reason. Betty, who had spent years trying to keep the diner afloat, had found a new sense of purpose. She'd become more than just the owner. She had become a symbol of resilience, of someone who refused to let go of what she loved. Tom, too, had changed. The man who had once wandered aimlessly through life, lost and broken, had found a new sense of belonging. The diner was his second chance, a place where he could rebuild not just the physical walls, but the parts of himself he had long forgotten. And Max, always by his side, had become not just a loyal companion, but a quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts in life come in the form of a dog's love. One afternoon, just as the diner was starting to fill up with customers, a car pulled into the parking lot. It was an old, beat-up sedan, the kind that looked like it had been through more than its fair share of trouble. Tom was wiping down a table when he noticed the car, his curiosity piqued. A man stepped out, tall, with dark hair that was beginning to show streaks of gray. He looked familiar, though Tom couldn't quite place him. The man stood for a moment, staring at the diner, as if trying to decide whether or not to enter. Betty, who had been at the counter, noticed the man too. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide with recognition. She walked toward the door, her steps slow and deliberate. Tom followed her gaze, watching as Betty approached the man. For a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other. David? Betty's voice was soft, filled with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. The man smiled faintly. Betty, I didn't expect to find you here. Tom's heart skipped a beat. He knew that name. David was Betty's late husband's best friend, the one who had helped Jack build the diner all those years ago. Betty's face softened as she stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't know you were still around, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. David nodded, his eyes filled with both sorrow and something else. Regret, maybe. I've been away for a long time. I never thought I'd come back, but something told me I needed to. Tom stepped forward, offering a hand. I'm Tom, he said, his voice calm but curious. I'm the one who helped Betty get this place back up and running. David looked at Tom, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I see. I guess Jack would be proud to see it still standing, huh? Betty smiled at the mention of Jack. He'd be proud of you too, David. You were always like family to us. David took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. I know I've been gone for a long time, and I don't expect anything. But I've been thinking a lot about the past, about Jack, about this diner, and I wanted to come back and make things right. Tom looked at Betty, who was still standing by the door, her face a mixture of surprise and emotion. What do you mean by making things right? Tom asked, his curiosity getting the best of him. David hesitated for a moment before he spoke. I've been living with a lot of guilt. After Jack passed, I was too caught up in my own life to come back and help. I didn't know how to face you, Betty, or this place. I guess I thought the diner would just fade away like everything else in my life. But now I see it's still here, still alive, and I realize I made a mistake by staying away. Betty placed a hand on his arm, her expression softening. It's never too late, David. We've all made mistakes. The important thing is that you're here now. David nodded, his eyes misty with emotion. I just want to do something for you, for Jack. I know this diner means everything to you, and I want to help make sure it stays that way. Tom could see the sincerity in David's eyes, the same sincerity that Betty had when she had first opened the diner years ago. There was something deeply moving about the idea that this place, this humble diner, had the power to heal old wounds, to bring people together who had once drifted apart. I think we could use all the help we can get, Tom said, smiling at David. We're rebuilding something here, and we'd be honored to have you help. David smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. Then let's get to work. Jack would have wanted it this way. The three of them stood there for a moment, the weight of the past hanging in the air. It was clear that, for all of them, this was a new beginning, a chance to heal old wounds and move forward together. The diner, once a place of hardship and struggle, had become a symbol of hope, of redemption, and of the power of second chances. As the days passed, the diner continued to thrive, its warm glow beckoning travelers and locals alike. Tom, Betty, and David had formed an unexpected team, working together to not only restore the diner physically, but to breathe new life into it in ways they never imagined. The diner had become a place of healing, not just for Betty, but for Tom as well. For the first time in years, he felt like he had found a purpose. The guilt that had weighed heavily on his heart seemed to lift with every task he completed, whether it was fixing a leaky roof or scrubbing down the kitchen. Max, always by his side, seemed to share in this newfound peace, his once tense demeanor now calm, as if the dog, too, could sense that they were finally home. Betty, despite her initial hesitation in accepting help from David, was beginning to warm to the idea of him being part of the diner once more. Her trust in him had been shaken after years of silence, but as they worked together, those old wounds started to heal. David had returned with a determination to make amends, to help Betty, and honor the legacy of the diner Jack had built. His knowledge of the diner, its history, and its place in the town's heart proved invaluable. He didn't just offer financial support, but something deeper, a genuine desire to see the diner succeed, to see Betty's dreams realized. One evening, as the sun set and the diner began to quiet down after a busy dinner rush, David approached Tom and Betty with an idea that had been brewing in his mind. I've been thinking, he said, his voice filled with purpose. This diner, it's more than just a business. It's a part of this town's soul. People here care about it. They care about you, Betty, and they need to know that this place is going to stay around, that it's going to thrive for years to come. Betty looked at him, intrigued. What are you getting at, David? David smiled, a glint of excitement in his eyes. I think we need to give the town a reason to believe in the diner again, a reason to be proud of it. We could host an event, a celebration, not just a regular diner night, but something special, something that lets people know we're here to stay. We've got the food, the atmosphere, and most importantly, we've got the spirit of this place. I think it's time to invite the whole town in and show them that the diner isn't just a place to eat. It's a place to belong. Tom, who had been quietly listening, nodded. I like the sound of that. A big event. Something that could really bring people together. It's time to show them what we've been working for. Betty hesitated for a moment, but then a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. I've always wanted to do something like that, she admitted. But I wasn't sure if anyone would come. I didn't want to risk failing again. David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Betty, this diner has already survived so much. It survived the fire, it survived the tough times, and it survived because of the heart and soul you've put into it. People will come. You've just got to believe in it, and in yourself, again. Tom smiled, feeling the weight of David's words. I'm with you, David. Let's make it happen. And so, they began to plan. The event would be a celebration of the diner's past, its present, and its future. They decided to call it a night at the diner, a nod to the classic diners of old, but with a modern twist. They would offer a special menu of the diner's best-loved dishes, old family recipes that had been passed down for generations. The walls would be adorned with old photographs of the diners. Early days, and local musicians would perform, giving the event an air of nostalgia and warmth. As the night of the event approached, the town buzzed with excitement. Word had spread quickly, and people were eager to show their support. It wasn't just about the food. It was about the community coming together to celebrate something that had been a part of their lives for so long. Betty could feel the nerves begin to rise within her, but she pushed them aside, knowing that this was her chance to show the town, and herself, that the diner was here to stay. The night of the event, the diner was packed. People filled every seat, and the air was filled with laughter and conversation. Betty, Tom, and David worked tirelessly, making sure everything ran smoothly. Max, of course, was there too, mingling with the crowd, his friendly demeanor putting everyone at ease. As the night went on, Betty stood at the counter, watching the people who had once stayed away, now gathered together in her diner, enjoying the food and the company. Her heart swelled with pride. This was more than just a diner. It was a symbol of resilience, of hope, and of the power of second chances. And in that moment, Betty realized something important. She had spent so many years focused on the diner's survival, on keeping it open just for the sake of keeping it open. But now, she understood that the diner wasn't just a place to serve food. It was a place to bring people together, to create memories, and to offer a sense of belonging. It was a place where miracles happened, and where the past and the future could meet. As the night came to a close, and the last of the guests left, Betty, Tom, and David stood outside the diner, looking up at the neon sign that flickered brightly in the night. It had been a success, a triumph. Betty's heart was full, and for the first time in a long time, she knew that the diner had a future that was bright and full of possibilities. As the weeks passed after the successful Night at the Diner event, the diner continued to flourish in ways that Betty had once only dreamed of. The town's support had been overwhelming, and for the first time in years, Betty felt like the weight of her fears had been lifted. The place was no longer just a business. It was a community hub, a home for everyone who walked through the door. Locals came in regularly for their morning coffee, the smell of fresh pastries filling the air, and the sounds of Max's wagging tail could be heard as he made his rounds. Tom and Betty had become like family, their bond strengthened by the shared work and the mutual respect they had for one another. But as things were looking brighter for the diner, there was an unexpected twist waiting in the wings. One chilly autumn morning, Tom was outside, fixing a loose gutter on the roof when a car pulled into the parking lot. It wasn't unusual for people to stop by, but this car caught his attention. It was a sleek black SUV, not the typical vehicle that passed through Ashford. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was dressed in a sharp, businesslike suit, her hair neatly tied back. She seemed out of place in the small, sleepy town. Tom's curiosity got the best of him, and he walked over to greet her. "Can I help you?" he asked, wiping his hands on his jeans. The woman turned to face him, her eyes scanning the diner before meeting his gaze. "Is this the famous diner everyone's talking about?" she asked, her voice smooth and professional. Tom smiled. "That's right. We've been getting quite a bit of attention lately. What brings you here?" The woman's lips curved into a small, polite smile. "I'm Alicia Brown. I represent a real estate development company. We're interested in buying property in this area, and your diner has come to our attention." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He had heard rumors about developers looking to buy up land in Ashford, but he hadn't expected anyone to come after the diner. "What exactly do you mean by buying the diner?" he asked, his voice cautious. That Alicia's expression softened, but there was a certain business-like detachment in her tone. "We're looking to expand our investments. This diner, while charming, is on a valuable piece of land. We believe we could offer you a fair price for it." Tom felt a tightening in his chest. The thought of losing the diner, the place that had become his lifeline, his home, was almost too much to bear. But he couldn't act on impulse. He had to find out more. "I'm not sure what you're asking," he said slowly. "You want to buy the land and the diner?" "Exactly," Alicia replied, her tone unwavering. "We would give you a competitive offer. You could walk away with a significant sum, and we would take over the property to develop something more modern. It would be a win-win situation for everyone." Tom took a step back, his mind racing. He hadn't expected this, especially not after everything they had worked so hard to build. "I'm afraid I need to talk it over with Betty," he said, his voice firm. "She's the owner, and we've worked together to rebuild this place." Alicia nodded. "Of course. I understand. We're offering a substantial amount of money, and we think it could be a great opportunity for both of you." She handed him a business card. "Here's my contact information. Let me know what you decide." Tom watched as Alicia got back in her car and drove away, the engine purring quietly as she disappeared down the road. He stood there for a moment, staring at the business card in his hand. He felt conflicted. On one hand, the offer was tempting. The money could change everything. But on the other hand, the diner was more than just a piece of property. It was a symbol of everything he and Betty had worked for. It was a place of community, of second chances. When Betty arrived later that morning, Tom didn't waste any time. He told her about the visit from Alicia and the offer they had made. Betty listened carefully, her face unreadable as she processed the information. "I don't know," she said quietly after a long pause. "It's a tempting offer, but it feels wrong. This place, it's more than just a business to me. It's my legacy, Jack's legacy." Tom nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I feel the same way. But we have to think about what's best for the future. If we keep going, we're going to need more resources. I don't want to lose this place either, but if we don't have the support, we might not make it." Betty stood up and walked to the window, her eyes scanning the diner as if she were seeing it for the first time. She let out a slow breath before turning back to Tom. "I know what you're saying, but I'm not ready to give up just yet. Not after everything we've been through." Tom smiled at her, a sense of understanding passing between them. "I'm with you. Whatever we decide, we'll do it together." That evening, the two of them sat together in the quiet diner, Max lying peacefully at their feet. The decision wasn't clear, but one thing was certain. They had worked too hard to let go now. The diner was their home, their dream, and they weren't ready to give it up without a fight. They would figure out a way to make it work. Together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. And no matter what, the diner would always be a symbol of their strength, their hope, and the second chances they had both found within its walls. As the days wore on, Tom and Betty found themselves facing an unexpected crossroads. The offer from Alicia and her real estate company still hung over them, the prospect of a large sum of money that could change their lives. But neither of them could shake the feeling that selling the diner, their home, their sanctuary, wasn't the right path. The more they talked about it, the clearer it became that their connection to the diner wasn't just about keeping the doors open. It was about preserving the heart of the town, the community, and everything they had built together. One chilly morning, as autumn began to settle into the town of Ashford, Tom stepped outside to grab the morning paper. The crisp air bit at his skin, a reminder that winter was fast approaching. As he walked back toward the diner, the old black SUV pulled into the parking lot again. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew that Alicia's visit wouldn't be the last. She had been persistent, always offering more money, always trying to convince them that selling was the right decision. But for Tom, it wasn't about the money. It was about something far more important. Betty was inside, setting the tables and preparing for the morning rush. Tom walked in and found her, her focus unwavering as she worked. He could see the weariness in her eyes, the toll that the decision had taken on her. She had always been strong, but the burden of the diner's future was starting to weigh on her. "Betty, Alicia's here again," Tom said, his voice carrying a mixture of frustration and determination. Betty looked up, her expression unreadable. She had expected this. She doesn't give up, does she? Tom shook his head. I don't think she's going to stop until we say yes. Betty sighed, her fingers trembling slightly as she folded a napkin. Tom, I've been thinking about it a lot. The money would solve a lot of problems. We could retire, we could move somewhere warm. I could stop working all the time. But her voice trailed off, and she looked down at the counter, her hands stilling. I don't know if that's what I want anymore. This diner is all I have left of Jack. It's not just about making money. It's about keeping something alive, something real. Tom nodded, understanding her pain. He had been in her shoes, feeling torn between the comfort of security and the need to hold on to what mattered most. I know, Betty. I feel the same way. This diner isn't just a building. It's a place where people come together. It's where I've found purpose again. And I think it's where you're meant to be too. Betty's eyes softened, a small tear escaping from the corner of her eye. She quickly wiped it away. I don't want to let go, but I don't know how much longer we can keep fighting. Tom placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We're not alone in this. We have each other, and we have the people who care about this place. We've already come so far. Just then, the door to the diner opened, and Alicia stepped inside, her businesslike demeanor instantly apparent. She looked around, as if appraising the diner once more. Good morning, she said, her tone polite but firm. I hope you've had some time to think about my offer. Betty didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned to Tom, her eyes searching his for reassurance. Tom nodded, taking a deep breath before stepping forward to face Alicia. We've been thinking about it, Alicia, and we've decided that we're not ready to sell. Alicia's expression faltered for just a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. I see. Well, I must say, I'm disappointed. This is a great opportunity for both of you. You could walk away with more money than you've ever imagined. We understand that, but we're not in this for the money, Tom said firmly. This diner is more than just a piece of property. It's a part of this town, a part of who we are, and we're not ready to let go of that. Alicia took a step back, her gaze moving over both of them. She seemed to consider their words for a moment before speaking again, this time with a hint of something softer in her voice. I respect your decision, but I would advise you to think about your future. This town isn't what it used to be, and you might not always have the support you think you do. Betty stood tall, her resolve firm. I've spent my whole life here, and I believe in this town. I believe in what we've built. We're not going anywhere. Alicia seemed to soften just a little, but she didn't back down. If you change your mind, my offer still stands. She handed them a business card and turned to leave. Tom and Betty watched her walk out of the diner, the door swinging shut behind her. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the soft clinking of dishes. Betty let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. That was harder than I thought it would be, Betty said, her voice quiet but resolute. Tom smiled, his heart swelling with pride. You did great, Betty. We both did. And in that moment, they knew that their decision was right. They weren't just holding on to a building. They were holding on to something far more important. Their past, their community, and the future they were determined to build together. They had faced the temptation of an easy escape, but they had chosen the harder, but more rewarding, path. The diner would survive, and so would they, because they had each other, and they had something worth fighting for. As the diner continued to grow and gain more attention, Tom and Betty found themselves in a routine that, while busy, felt deeply fulfilling. Every morning, they were greeted by the comforting aroma of fresh coffee brewing, the sizzling sound of bacon hitting the skillet, and the steady rhythm of the diner coming to life. Customers came and went, each one leaving with a smile and a sense of warmth that only a place like this could provide. It had become more than just a diner. It was a gathering place, a home away from home for the people of Ashford. Tom often found himself thinking back to when he first arrived in town, how lost he had been, wandering without purpose. Now, the diner was his purpose, and he had Betty by his side, someone who shared his commitment to this place and to each other. Betty, too, felt the changes within herself. After the visit from Alicia and the decision to keep the diner, she had found a renewed sense of purpose. The pressure of making ends meet had been lifted, and she realized just how much she had neglected her own well-being over the years. She had spent so much time focused on the diner, on keeping it open, that she had forgotten to live. Now, with the support of Tom and the community behind her, she could finally begin to breathe. She started to take better care of herself, taking walks in the evenings after the diner closed, enjoying the quiet of the town. It was during one of these walks that she ran into a familiar face. It was Mary, a longtime customer of the diner, and Betty hadn't seen her in weeks. Mary was holding a basket of fresh apples, the red fruit glistening in the soft light of the setting sun. "Betty, I was hoping to catch you," Mary called out, her voice warm and friendly. Betty smiled, walking over to her. "Mary, it's so good to see you. I was just thinking about you the other day. How have you been?" Mary grinned, handing the basket to Betty. "I've been good, keeping busy. I brought you some apples from my orchard. I thought you might like them for your pies." Betty took the basket, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Mary. This is exactly what we need. You know, we've been experimenting with some new recipes lately. Maybe we'll try something new with these." The two women chatted for a while, catching up on life in Ashford, and it became clear to Betty that the community wasn't just supporting the diner. It was supporting her, too. People like Mary, who had been coming to the diner for years, had become like family. And it wasn't just the customers. David, Tom, and even Max had become a part of her family, a family she had never realized she had. The next few days were filled with preparations for a new addition to the diner. With the success of the last event, Tom and Betty decided to host a monthly community night, a chance for the people of Ashford to come together, enjoy a meal, and share stories. They began decorating the diner, setting up tables for the event, and planning a special menu that would highlight local ingredients, including the apples Mary had brought. As the event drew closer, the excitement in town grew. Flyers were posted around Ashford, and word of mouth spread like wildfire. People were eager to gather at the diner, not just for the food, but for the sense of belonging it provided. It was clear that the diner had become more than just a place to eat. It was a cornerstone of the community, a place where people felt seen, heard, and valued. On the night of the event, the diner was packed. The hum of conversation filled the air, and laughter echoed in the corners. The special menu was a hit, with the apple pie being a standout favorite. Betty moved between the tables, greeting old friends and new faces, her heart swelling with pride as she watched the community come together in a way she hadn't seen in years. Tom was busy in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and making sure everything ran smoothly. Max, of course, was there, mingling with the guests, his tail wagging as he was showered with attention from the children who loved him. As the night wore on, and the last of the guests finished their meals, Tom and Betty found themselves standing at the counter, a quiet moment amidst the bustle of cleanup. "This is it, Betty," Tom said, his voice filled with awe. "This is what we've been working for." Betty smiled, her eyes glistening. "I know. It feels like everything has come full circle. The diner, the town, our lives. It's all coming together." Just as they were about to head into the back to start cleaning, the door opened, and a familiar figure stepped inside. It was David, looking tired but happy. "You two did it," he said, his voice full of pride. "This place is buzzing with life again." Betty looked at him and smiled. "We did it together." David nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a deep understanding. "And you're not alone in this. We've all found something in this place. A reason to keep going. A reason to believe." As the three of them stood there, looking around at the diner that had become so much more than a business, it was clear to Betty that they had created something lasting, something that would continue to grow and evolve as long as they were willing to fight for it. And with the support of the community, the love of her family, and the strength she had found within herself, Betty knew that the diner would never just be a place to eat. It would always be a home. And that was the greatest miracle of all. As the seasons changed, the diner continued to thrive, each day bringing new faces and new opportunities. Tom, Betty, and David had found their rhythm, working together to keep the diner running smoothly. What once seemed like an impossible dream had now become their reality. The warmth of the community, the steady flow of customers, and the bond they had built with each other made every challenge worth it. The diner wasn't just a place to eat anymore. It was a place where people found connection, where the heart of the town beat. One morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden glow on Ashford, Betty stood by the counter, looking out the window. She watched as the town slowly came to life, the streets empty at first, then gradually filling with people. Her thoughts drifted back to the time before Tom and David had come into her life, when the diner seemed like it was on the brink of fading away. She had almost given up, but now, the place was full of life, full of hope. Tom walked in, wiping his hands on a rag, a smile on his face. "Morning, Betty. Another beautiful day." Betty turned to him, her smile soft but genuine. "It really is. I've been thinking about everything. How far we've come." Tom nodded, leaning against the counter. "We've come a long way, but we couldn't have done it without each other. This diner, it's ours now, not just a business, but a part of us. Part of the town, too," Betty added, her eyes glancing over at the framed photo on the wall of the diner's first opening day. "I never thought I'd see this place so full of life again. It feels like we're doing something important, something that matters." Just as Betty spoke, the door chimed, and a familiar face walked in. It was Mary, carrying a basket of fresh eggs from her farm. "Good morning, Betty, Tom," she greeted warmly, placing the basket on the counter. "I brought you the freshest eggs in Ashford, just like I promised." Betty smiled, taking the basket from Mary. "You're too good to us, Mary. These will make the best breakfast special." Mary chuckled, her eyes twinkling. "It's nothing, Betty. You've given so much to this town with your diner. It's the least I can do." Tom stood back, watching the exchange. There was something magical about the way the people of Ashford had embraced the diner. They weren't just customers, they were part of the family. And the family had grown beyond what he could have ever imagined. The day passed quickly, filled with laughter, good food, and the steady hum of conversation. People came and went, but it was clear that the diner had become a centerpiece of Ashford. It wasn't just a place to grab a meal. It was a gathering spot for friends, for families, for anyone who needed a place to belong. Later that afternoon, after the lunch rush had subsided, Betty, Tom, and David gathered in the back office, a place they had come to think of as their strategy room. They had been discussing the future of the diner and how to keep it growing, especially with the steady increase in business. There were new opportunities to explore, but also new challenges to face. David, who had been quiet for most of the discussion, finally spoke up. "I've been thinking about expanding the diner, maybe adding a little more seating, or even offering a catering service. We've built something special here, but we can't let it plateau. We've got to keep moving forward." Betty nodded thoughtfully. "I agree. The last event we had was such a success. What if we held more of them? Maybe even start offering cooking classes, get people involved in what we do here. We could create something really unique." Tom leaned forward, his eyes bright with excitement. "That's a great idea. We could bring the town together even more, make the diner a place for people to learn, to create, to connect." Betty smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "And it would give us a chance to share our story with everyone, to show them how much heart we've put into this place." They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, bouncing off each other's thoughts, and coming up with ways to build upon the success they had already achieved. It was clear that they weren't just running a diner. They were building a legacy. As they wrapped up the meeting, David stood up and stretched. "I'm excited for what's next. We've come a long way, but this is just the beginning." Betty and Tom exchanged a look, both of them understanding the weight of his words. They had worked hard to get to this point, but there was still so much to be done. The diner was their dream, but it was also their responsibility to keep it thriving, to keep it meaningful. The next few weeks were filled with planning and preparation. The diner hosted more community events, including a pie baking contest, a local band night, and even a cooking class for kids, where they taught them how to make their favorite dishes from the diner menu. Each event brought in more people, more connections, and more opportunities to grow. Betty, Tom, and David found themselves more energized than ever, seeing firsthand how much the diner meant to the town. One evening, after another successful event, the three of them stood outside the diner, looking at the neon sign that flickered in the dark. It was late, and most of the guests had left, but the sense of accomplishment lingered in the air. "You know," Betty said, her voice quiet but full of warmth, "I used to think this place was just a business. But now I know it's more than that. It's a home for everyone who walks through these doors. And it's a place where we can make a difference." Tom smiled, his heart full. "It's more than we ever could have imagined. And it's just getting started." David, standing beside them, nodded in agreement. "We've built something special here, and we're going to keep building it. Together." And in that moment, standing outside the diner that had become their foundation, Betty, Tom, and David knew that the future was theirs to shape. They had come so far, but the journey was far from over. Together, they would continue to build, to create, and to serve their community. For as long as the diner stood, it would be a symbol of hope, of second chances, and of the power of a shared dream. As the months passed, the diner continued to evolve, not just as a business, but as the heart of Ashford. The idea of community nights and special events had brought people together in ways Betty, Tom, and David hadn't imagined. Each event seemed to breathe new life into the place, making it more than just a place to eat. It had become a space where people shared their stories, their joys, and sometimes even their sorrows. It was a place of connection, where everyone felt seen and valued. One crisp autumn evening, as the town was gearing up for the annual Harvest Festival, Betty sat at the counter, her eyes wandering over the stacks of paperwork. The diner was full, as usual, but there was a tension in the air. A new challenge was on the horizon. Betty had received an offer from Alicia's company once again, this time with a figure that was more than tempting. The money they were offering could solve every financial problem they'd ever had. It could give Betty and Tom the chance to retire, to leave the diner behind, and live a life of peace and comfort. But as she looked around the diner, at the people laughing and talking, she felt a weight in her chest. She couldn't just walk away from all of this, the history, the connections, the community they had built. It wasn't just about money. It was about purpose. Tom came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He smiled when he saw her sitting there, lost in thought. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Betty looked up at him, her expression conflicted. "I got another offer from Alicia's company. They're offering even more money this time. I don't know what to do, Tom. It would fix everything. But I can't just sell the diner. Not now. Not after everything we've built." Tom sat down beside her, taking a deep breath. "I know it's hard. I've been thinking about it too. But you're right. This place isn't just a business. It's a part of us. It's a part of this town. We can't let it go just for the money." Betty nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter. "I don't want to give it up, but I don't know how much longer we can keep going. I've put everything into this place. I've sacrificed so much of my life to keep it running, and I don't want to do it alone anymore." Tom reached out and placed his hand over hers. "You're not alone, Betty. You never were. We've all been in this together. David, you, me, and everyone who's walked through those doors. This diner is part of our story. It's part of who we are, and I'm not ready to give up on it either." David entered the room, overhearing the last part of the conversation. He paused for a moment, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" he asked, sitting down across from them. Betty sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "The offer. It's too good to ignore. But I can't bring myself to sell. This diner, it's everything to me. To all of us." David leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "You know, when I came back, I thought I was just helping you get back on your feet. I didn't realize how much this place had come to mean to me too. It's not just a diner. It's a home. It's where people come together, where they find something they didn't even know they needed." Tom nodded in agreement. "Exactly. It's not about the money. It's about the community, the family we've created here." Betty smiled, her heart warmed by their words. "You're right. But it's hard to know what the right choice is. I've been doing this for so long. Maybe it's time to let go." David's voice was steady but firm. "Letting go doesn't always mean giving up. You don't have to decide right now, Betty. But don't make this choice based on fear or exhaustion. If you love this place, if you believe in it, then you fight for it. Don't let anyone take it from you." Betty looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "I don't want to let go. I don't want to give up on everything Jack and I built. But I don't know if I can keep fighting." Tom leaned forward, his gaze meeting hers. "We're here for you, Betty. We've got this. We'll figure it out together." For the first time in days, Betty felt a sense of clarity. She wasn't alone in this fight. She never had been. And with Tom, David, and the community behind her, she knew that she didn't have to make this decision alone. She could keep the diner. She could keep the dream alive. As they sat there, talking about their next steps, a sense of peace washed over Betty. She realized that it wasn't about the money or the offers that came their way. It was about what they were willing to give to keep the diner alive. And she was ready to give everything she had. The decision wasn't easy, but it was the right one. She wouldn't let the diner go, not now, not when it had become more than just a business. It had become a lifeline, a symbol of hope, and a testament to the power of second chances. Later that evening, after the diner had quieted down and the last customer had left, Betty stood in front of the counter, looking at the empty chairs and tables. She smiled softly, knowing that this was just the beginning. They weren't giving up. They were going to fight for the diner, for each other, and for the community that had supported them all along. And with that, she felt a renewed sense of strength, knowing that together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. The following weeks passed with a new sense of purpose for Betty, Tom, and David. They had made the decision to stand strong, to fight for the diner, and for everything it represented. Alicia's offer, tempting as it had been, no longer felt like the right choice. They had something much more valuable, a community that relied on them, a legacy that needed to be preserved, and a sense of family that couldn't be bought or sold. The community nights continued to grow in popularity, each one bringing new faces into the diner, all eager to experience the warmth and the sense of belonging that had become its hallmark. Betty found herself smiling more often now, her heart light as she greeted each new guest. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about connection, about creating a space where people could come together, share stories, and find comfort in each other's company. The diner had become a true reflection of everything she had always wanted it to be. Tom had become more involved with the community as well. He had always been a quiet, reserved man, but now he found himself engaging with the people who walked through the door. He would spend hours chatting with the regulars, helping to repair things around town, and offering a listening ear to anyone who needed it. He had finally found the peace he had been searching for, the peace that only came from knowing that you were doing something meaningful, something that mattered. David, too, had become a vital part of the diner's success. His experience in business and his knowledge of the town's history had proved invaluable in helping them expand their reach. He worked tirelessly behind the scenes, securing supplies, coordinating events, and making sure everything ran smoothly. But more than that, he had become a source of wisdom and guidance for both Betty and Tom. The diner wasn't just about keeping it open anymore. It was about building something that would last, something that would continue to serve the community for years to come. One afternoon, as Betty and Tom were preparing for another community night, the door opened, and in walked a familiar face. It was Mary, the local farmer who had become a close friend over the past few months. She was carrying a basket of fresh produce, her face lit up with a smile. "I thought I'd bring you some of the best tomatoes from my farm," she said, setting the basket down on the counter. "They're ripe and ready for your famous sandwiches." Betty smiled warmly at Mary, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You always know just what we need, Mary. Thank you so much." As Betty turned to start prepping the tomatoes, she noticed a few other familiar faces walk through the door. It seemed like the whole town had shown up for another community night. It was amazing to see how much the diner had become a gathering place for everyone. People from all walks of life came together here, not just for the food, but for the sense of belonging, for the shared experience of sitting down together at the same table. That night, as the diner filled with laughter and conversation, Betty couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. This was what she had always wanted, a place where people didn't just come to eat, but to connect, to share, to heal. And it was happening, right here, in her diner. Later in the evening, as the last of the guests were finishing their meals, Betty and Tom took a moment to step outside and catch their breath. The cool evening air was refreshing, and they stood on the steps, looking out at the town that had supported them so much. "I think we've made it," Betty said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I never imagined we'd get to this point. This diner, it's become everything I ever hoped for and more." Tom smiled, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "We've worked hard for this. We've fought for it. And we've got something that money can't buy." Betty nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "Family, community, love. That's what this place is about. And that's why we can't give it up. Not for anything." Tom squeezed her shoulder, a sense of peace settling over him. "And we won't. We've got this, Betty. We've got each other, and we've got the diner. Together, we can handle whatever comes our way." As they stood there, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, Betty felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything they had accomplished. The diner wasn't just a business. It was a home, a place of comfort, a place where dreams were built. And with the support of Tom, David, and the entire community, she knew that this was just the beginning. The future was bright, and no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together, side by side, with the same determination and love that had brought them this far. And as the sound of Max's bark echoed from inside the diner, Betty knew that their journey had only just begun. As the months turned into years, the diner continued to be the heart of Ashford, thriving not just as a business, but as a place where memories were made and lives intertwined. The small town, once quiet and sleepy, now felt like a community bound together by the warmth and love that radiated from the diner's walls. Betty, Tom, and David had built something that could never be measured in dollars. They had built a legacy, one that would live on for generations. Betty, now fully at peace with the decisions she had made, stood at the counter one evening, watching the soft glow of the setting sun filter through the windows. The diner was quieter now, the dinner rushed long past, and a calm had settled over the room. She had a moment to reflect on the incredible journey she had been on. From the brink of giving up to now, running the diner with a renewed sense of purpose, she realized that this place wasn't just about keeping the doors open. It was about keeping the spirit of Ashford alive. Tom, still by her side, had become more than just a partner in business. He was her rock, her equal, and her best friend. He had been there every step of the way, sharing in every victory and every challenge. Max, their ever-faithful dog, now, older but still full of life, sat by their feet, watching the diners come and go with the same calm presence he had brought to their lives from the very beginning. David, too, had found his place in the diner's story. No longer just the outsider who had returned to offer help, he had become family. His knowledge and experience had guided them through the tough times, and his unwavering belief in the diner's potential had been the spark that reignited Betty's passion. Together, the three of them had created something that no offer of money could ever replace. One evening, as the soft hum of the diner filled the air, a young couple walked in, looking lost but hopeful. They were new to Ashford, drawn in by the warm light shining from the diner's windows. Betty smiled as she greeted them, their unfamiliar faces a reminder of the constant flow of new people who found their way to the diner. It was a place where no one was a stranger for long. "Welcome to the diner," Betty said warmly, her voice carrying the same welcoming tone that had greeted so many before them. "What can I get for you?" The couple smiled, clearly relieved to find a friendly face. "We've heard a lot about this place," the woman said, settling into a booth. "It's nice to finally see it for ourselves." Betty's heart swelled with pride. The diner had come to represent everything she had hoped for, a place of connection, of warmth, of home. "You're in the right place," she said with a wink. "You'll feel right at home here in no time." As Betty turned to take their order, she felt a familiar hand on her shoulder. She glanced over to see Tom, who had been busy in the kitchen but had stepped out to check on her. He smiled at her, his eyes soft with affection. "They're good people," he said, nodding toward the couple. "We'll make sure they feel at home." Betty smiled back, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She had no doubt that they would. This was exactly what the diner was all about. It was a place where everyone belonged. Later that evening, as the last of the guests left and the diner slowly emptied, Betty and Tom sat together, sharing a moment of quiet after another successful night. The diner was still bustling, still alive with laughter and stories. But there was an undeniable calm in the air now. They had made it. They had done what they set out to do. "You know, I never imagined it would come to this," Betty said softly, her eyes drifting over the familiar walls. "But I'm glad we fought for it." Tom reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Me too. We've built something special here. Something that can't be taken away." Betty smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything they had accomplished. "I think we've finally found our home, Tom. Not just the diner, but here, in Ashford. This is where we were meant to be." Tom nodded, his eyes softening with affection. "And this is where we'll stay." As they sat there in the quiet of the diner, the world outside seemed far away. There was no more uncertainty, no more doubt. They had fought for this place, and it had become their legacy. The diner wasn't just a building. It was a living testament to everything they had overcome and everything they had yet to achieve. And as Betty looked around at the place that had become so much more than she ever imagined, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The diner would continue to thrive, and with it, so would the community, the family they had built, and the dream they had started so many years ago. And in that quiet moment, Betty realized that sometimes the greatest miracles weren't about finding something new. They were about realizing that what you had all along was exactly what you needed. And with that, she felt more at peace than she ever had before.